Hello, everybody. Welcome to the return episode of the Gun Gamers podcast. Today, we are just talking about our year in review for Gun Gamers Productions, the events we host here. And it was a really, really fun year, and we had a lot of fun talking about it. So hopefully you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the return episode of the Gun Gamers podcast. We have not done one of these in a little while, but I'm happy to be bringing it back. And we've got the other co-hosts of Gun Gamers Productions here, Kyle and Lane. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you doing, Eric?
Yeah. Hell yeah. Just in case everyone doesn't know who we all are, hi, I'm Eric. And how about you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Lane.
All right. And so we have spent all year being super busy, doing a lot of stuff, doing a lot of airsoft stuff. And the biggest project, I think, this summer was definitely our season of Gun Gamers Productions. And man, what a season that was.
Yeah, it has been an absolutely wild season. I mean, it was an amazing time hosting it and producing the events. We did some new stuff. We did our first 24-hour and our first LARP game this year. So it was a lot. It was good, though.
Yeah, it was definitely like a lot of back to back. Like the games were a little closer than maybe they should have been in hindsight, but it was just like 3 solid months of just thinking about airsoft, which in a way was pretty cool, but it was definitely a lot of work for us to undertake.
Yeah, I think that was one of my big improves for next year is that we're gonna space out our games more because, oh man. But honestly, aside from the craziness of doing those back to back to back, I feel like, man, those games are so much fun. And I got to play in 2 of them too, which was really, really cool. I really liked being able to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice improve to be able to get time on the field and experience what the players are experiencing. I feel like that just leads to making better games. Kyle, we got to get you and playing a game soon.
I know. I haven't gotten a chance to play a game yet, and that's ridiculous, and we are going to be fixing that.
Dude, honestly, man, like Trailblazer, I had the moment where my truck got stuck and I was real poopy for that. But other than that, Trailblazer absolutely ruled. I actually kind of liked going out at night, and I had just like grabbed all my stuff because I'm like, all right, I dealt with the truck. I can't quit. I got to go back. And I just had my handheld PVS 14 because I couldn't even find the headset. And I've got my RPK in the other hand, and I'm just walking around with the most jank setup ever.
Just fueled by rage. Like, I'm going to go kill some airsofters right now. Like, I have to finish out the game. Man. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cool things about this year, and I mean, we'll talk about all of the games, but we did get to use a brand new facility that wasn't just new to us. It was brand new to airsoft in general, and that was the Landing, which is primarily like their normal business is kind of an off-road park. But that created, and you guys actually scouted out this venue. I didn't get to go for the scouting. It was a really cool facility, and it worked out great for airsoft.
Yeah, I think the Landing is one of those facilities that a lot of game types probably wouldn't want to use it because I feel like you really have to have that way to use all of that terrain. That's not just going to feel like a stalemate over like one particular battle line all day. And I do think there were a couple of moments where that game was just really intense fighting for a long time over a battle line, but then it would move right as it was getting old, which I feel like you couldn't do that with permanent respawns at a game. I think it would get very old very quickly if you had like just permanent respawns on either end of that field.
No, permanent respawns, that AO just wouldn't work. You need to be able to rotate depending on how things play out. And so it worked out exceptionally well. And we didn't even actually get to use a very sizable chunk of it. So, I mean, we may have to go back at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, like, to your point.
Are we playing coy? We're going back there. Come on.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like by having our system where respawns do move and they're not safe, it helped to keep it fresh. Which, if you weren't able to go to the game, it was a very hilly, like we were on a slope for most, if not all of it. So yeah, if things were kind of stuck in one kind of like direction the entire game, it would have gotten old pretty quickly. But by having those moving respawns, by having respawns not be safe, instead of just being this all day, it became this or this, any sort of avenue
Mhm.
that you wanted, and just help to keep things fresh throughout the day. So it's definitely a cool AO, a challenging AO. I think that was
Oh yeah.
the hardest game by far for staffing. Like,
Oh
even
yeah.
the 24-hour, which was twice as long, I feel like was a breeze versus like manually carrying
Yeah.
ammo up that hill a dozen times. And like, when we go back, we've got plans to make it a little bit easier for logistics, like BBs in
Oh
water,
yeah.
but what a demanding game from
Yeah.
our side.
From the back end, that was by far the most demanding game that we have ever done on the back end. I got Eric's truck stuck. I mean, it was we had some challenges. We overcame them, and it was a great
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I mean that's the main thing, right? Is like the game was hard for everybody, but I think the challenge in that amount of time for 12 hours too was just it was the right amount. It seemed like players really enjoyed the heavy amount of violence too, which was insane to me. I did
We
not expect that much.
we went through more like twice as much BBs per person at that event compared to our average events. That's how much nonstop violence was going on. It was wild.
We went through more ammo at Trailblazer than Foreign Valley.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
by a
I
significant amount.
remember no, I remember the sun going down and just like dumping a box instead of like the standard issue like BBs that we'd hand out in like bottles. Be like, this is what you got. Make it last for the last 3 hours. The game almost went through the entire company's supply of ammo, which like thank God we just always bring like all the ammo for a game like that because
Yeah.
very violent, extremely violent, and all those poor BBs had to get carried uphill by hand.
Yeah, but it was super sweet.
Oh yeah, no, it was worth it. Like it was worth the pain, and it was worth destroying my boots just to make sure that people could keep those machine guns fed.
Oh yeah. And that's the funny thing is because then we went to our 24-hour game, which was our first 24-hour game, and that was well, we've actually skipped over an entire game this year, by the way,
We
'cause we're
did,
just talking
yeah,
about the
we did,
summer
yeah.
season.
Yeah.
We had Remnant in the winter.
Yes.
Oh man, that feels like forever ago now.
It
Because
does
now we're
feel like forever ago.
now we're in
because there was
October.
because it wasn't just 45 days between Remnant and the Trailblazer. There was actually some
Yes.
time between those two games, so it feels like an entirely different season that it happened in. But that was our first game of 2024. It was also my first game with the company.
Yeah, Remnant was like
Was.
to start off the season, it was just like a solid all around banger with well balanced violence. We had lots of drones at that one. I mean, it was just it was a good time all the way around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I liked about Remnant was that I mean obviously we had attrition and attrition was -10
Yeah.
and that made people really slow down. Remnant was warmer, actually warmer to a fault in my opinion. But we can't control the weather. If we could, we would make it miserable. But that game I think had a much higher tempo than attrition did for a lot of it. And then it was interesting to see how those games played differently, but kind of the same as well. It was just opposite sides had kind of a similar experience of spiraling around the field.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
would
that's
say
just how
so.
it goes. Go ahead, Kyle.
Nope, that go ahead. You got it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of how it goes. And Zulu, like, luckily, I mean, the facility is great. Like, that's my favorite
Yeah.
place to go for like your standard open play, and it's got a great community. But that is just kind of the way that the field plays. And I will say, going back to your thought of the tempo, as somebody who played attrition, like the objective was survive. Like it was
Yeah.
freezing. Like it was just miserably cold. Guns were dying, a car died. Like it was just like the objective of that game was don't die. Like
Yeah.
literally. And then with Remnant, it was like, once you were moving around, like you were very, very comfortable, I feel, and it wasn't quite as bad. So I feel like, yeah, it just led to being a little bit more violent than the first game there.
Mhm.
Except for, I will say, at night, the final like last stand where I think it was the Gojis attacked the
Yeah, and
Connex
the Elmer
building.
got wiped out.
Yeah, that was violent. Like that was awesome. That's in
That
the
was
recap
beautiful.
video that Camera Ninja made for us of that event. That was super violent compared to the first year, I feel. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was great. You know, again, the Zulu folks are just always great. You know, we're glad that we're able to go out there. I just
I
think that it
would
was a
definitely
lot.
go back there at some point. I'm looking forward to trying a different facility for this next year because I just don't want to run the same game back to back to back, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. I think it's important to kind of have a change of pace. And I think that players are going to see that as we begin to announce our 2025 schedule. I won't spoil too much for that, except for our winter game that is coming up that we have announced. There's information about that down in the description below. But yeah, I think Zulu is great. I think it just, to do it 3 years in a row for the winter game, I feel like it'd be a little too similar for players. You know, like if you were somebody who
Mhm.
tried both sides for year one and then year two, like we just want to make sure that the games are always interesting for the players who are experiencing them.
Correct. Yeah, and we're always trying to develop our games, try new techniques, go further, and sometimes that just means we just have to switch it up a year so it doesn't feel the same. We're always trying to improve our shit. So
Yeah. I feel like I sound very critical, but it I mean both games were incredible. And Remnant I do think was a really, really great start to the year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely set up a good tempo. And again, in hindsight, having the amount of time from Remnant, which was February of this year, to
Yeah.
then Trailblazer, which was what, June, late May?
That was
yeah.
June
June.
15th.
June.
Yep.
Oh God, on the back end, that was wonderful having all that
Yep.
time between those games. Because like, part of the thing is like, it sounds like a dream to be able to run your own events, and it is, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of work. And it was nice being able to do like to play other events or go to open
Mhm.
plays or just do family stuff. So it was awesome to have that amount of time between those games to get back to some of the other reasons of why I like the hobby besides running events.
Yeah, I mean, we're players too, which is I think the strength is because we play our own product, we play other people's product, and I like being able to experience the variety that airsoft can offer personally. And I think that makes for a stronger understanding of our commitment to game design. I just think you have to be able to experience all of it.
Absolutely. So I guess, we kind of talked about Trailblazer, so we got to talk about Shadows, I feel like, because that was our first
Oh my
24-hour. Oh my God, that was intense.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
so
that was a lot.
yes.
That was
Yeah.
what I loved about Shadows though was how brutal that game was physically compared to our normal games.
Mm-hmm.
And players like we have a variety of players, and not all of them do a lot of like really serious hiking. So you get up into those mountains, is what I'm going to call that, and you are hiking around for 24 hours. There were guys like realizing, oh my god, I'm having to push through my limit here, and I loved seeing that. I loved people embracing the challenge of it and just being so motivated with the role play and the just good sportsmanship and everything. I feel like the camaraderie was so strong that weekend because there was so much like mutual suffering.
Builds character.
It does build character. I would say the balance of fighting and our cadence for our first 24 hours went excellent because we challenged everyone, but we didn't start force dropping people by just taking our 12-hour tempo and doubling it because then everybody would die. So it was a very nice balance. We didn't get a lot of sleep as in the back thing area as staff. We got like probably as much as the average player did because we were running rotations, and it was a good time though. I really really enjoyed
I
hosting it.
barely ever sleep at GGP, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
same.
no. I will say, going back to that, what you just said, Kyle, about not trying to kill our players, there were a lot of people who thought we were trying to kill them because if you haven't been to BFR before, there's like two sides of the facility basically. You have like a valley and then what they call the airfield, which is where we have people park all the way down here. And then you have the other half of the valley, which is where we made the game. So right off the bat, it was okay. We just got through our safety brief, climb the hill, um, for both teams, and it was like it. If you had never rucked before or done any serious backpacking, it was a lesson for a lot of people. I saw people who like it was definitely their first time doing it. They had stuff hanging off of them. It was a challenge for them and even for experienced people. But I think that in a way kind of tuckered people out as we began the game. So it could make the game move a little bit more slower, methodical right off the bat.
I also think one of the best things we did at Shadows that I want to take as a lesson for more games next year is we started the factions further apart. And I actually like that idea because while it doesn't allow for like that immediate contact that a lot of people like, I think patrolling to contact and patrolling to objectives, I think that adds a lot to the game. It makes like recon elements really useful.
Yes, recon was huge at that game. All the recon element, it allowed them to knock out enemy PBs. I mean, there was a lot of recon work at that game, which was fantastic.
Yeah, and both sides were actually like trying to intelligently place patrol bases so they wouldn't get wiped out. There were a lot of patrol base wipes at that game for like the actual spawn beacons. Those were just being taken out left and right.
Yeah, I would say that probably that game had the most spawn beacons being taken out of any game we've ever hosted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about BFR is the space that it gives us using that half of the facility. Because yeah, it allowed for you to to me, I find that really fun to kind of go on a nature walk and knowing that I'm not gonna walk 300 meters and immediately get into a gunfight. To me, I really enjoy that because I'm just kind of going through the woods and it could happen. I feel like it kind of keeps me on my toes and makes me enjoy some of the things about airsoft that I wouldn't like it's an experience you don't get going to the open play because you probably see the other spawn at that field or you're going to run into them 5 minutes into the game. But kind of having that hike through the woods where you may or may not get into contact and you're doing recon, I really like that because you just don't get that at your average airsoft game.
Yeah, I actually think that's going to be like how we talked about the issue of like fields potentially playing the same. I think how we avoid that in the future is we do more of that sandboxy start. And I actually think that would be a really strong idea to implement at both the landing and a future run to Zulu at some point.
Oh yeah, no, I've done some speculation on. I have some ideas jotted down for the landing and how we could do things. It's gonna be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
I think
especially
we're
because
going to
there's
have
a
a
lot
lot
we
of
didn't
room
use.
to maneuver.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I talked over you, Lane.
No, I mean there was just a lot of that facility that we didn't use. So and I mean the same could be said about BFR. We didn't use the first time we went to BFR, we didn't use any of that for this game really. We
No.
decided to use
Yes.
the other part of the facility, which I think is the better half, honestly. Everybody loves
I
the
agree.
idea of playing at a shoot house, but the shoot house there, it's really cool for what they built it for, which is firearms training. Not the funnest thing to play airsoft around because it's surrounded by open field. So it's just like a machine gunner's heaven versus everybody else just taking pot shots at the window. So I love that other half of BFR that we used this year. Go ahead.
I will say you can assault that shoot house. We saw it last year where they were coming in through the wood line up top. You just have to everywhere you go at BFR, you got to be willing to hike for it.
Yep.
But I
Yeah,
think
if you
that's
just go
that
basically
facility's
uphill.
strength.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. Yeah, I mean, I guess the cool thing about the BFR game to me was because it was 24 hours, it was just a whole different dynamic for running games as well. Because for the winter game especially, most of the game is dark because it gets dark by 5 o'clock in February in the Northeast. But having to run the game at night, through the night, and keep it interesting throughout the night was a fun challenge as a game master.
Yeah, I actually really liked one of the things we did a lot of was we were just driving my truck out on the field and it just turned into some episodes of us just sitting there listening to the gunfight and waiting for the radio call of, oh, we need water or whatever. And it was honestly just a solid vibe.
Yeah, no, we got to listen to and watch some crazy night raids on both sides trying to raid enemy PBs. It was fantastic.
And Lane, you got to hop in on one of the PB raids, right?
Yeah. So I was like, all right, it's getting a little dull. Like maybe let's find something for them to do. Everybody was tired. We made them climb up hills and get in gunfights all day. So I scrounged together like a squad of guys. And like I knew where everything was, obviously, because I was running the game all day. So I was like, hey, like we think we know where their patrol base is. It's in this general direction. How do you guys want to handle it? And they're like, oh, we'll just, follow this road. And I'm like, all right, like if that's what you want to do, like we won't handrail it. We'll just go down the road and see what happens. So I was like, I think it was like me and one other guy had nods. It might have been Ben, one of our staff members, who was just following along as well. And this was a hot and humid game, and especially with my helmet on and everything, with my face mask, I was fogging real bad. I walked us up to the PB. I walked us into an ambush. and somehow I was the only one who died. I remember they had a sentry like up at the gate, and or not a gate, just like where it ended, rather, I should say. And when the ambush kicked off, I like popped up and I got him, which is funny because it was one of my friends. But yeah, I got shot. Everybody else left me. They ran away. They found out where the PB was and they ran away. And then
they did Operation Alarm Clock later that night too.
Yeah, they did go for a second raid as well. But something that I just thought was really funny about that, besides being abandoned, was that the guys who I had just got into a gunfight with started trying to medic me. Like three people started being like, "Where's your tourniquet?" And I'm like, I run the company. I shouldn't be the one to teach them this lesson. That would just be bad. so then I was like, yo, dude, like, can you have my buddy medic me? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, like my buddy has my tourniquet on him. And they're like, well, who's your buddy? And I'm like, oh, it's Matt. I think he was the CO for that side. So then I get Matt to come up to me, and he's like, who are you? And I'm like, hey, Matt, like your guys keep trying to tourniquet me, and I don't want to be mean, but like you should tourniquet me. And then they took me as a prisoner for a little bit. I got to talk to some of my friends, and then went back in shame after I died.
Wow. I can't believe they left you. It's messed up.
Can't those freaking Gojis left me behind. That's what I get for being one of them for half an hour. I get abandoned.
Oh my God. Can we take an interlude? I feel like in the lead up to talking about the role-playing game, can we take an interlude, speaking of Gojis, to talk about how awesome it is to see the player base like embrace the lore and embrace the LARP?
Oh, the things coming out of our game format and world is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, seeing the players who are just so committed, like it's really cool as the people who have crapped the universe to see people like buy into it as well. But I think it makes such a more immersive time on the field when people are going, I'm gonna go get those Gojis, or I'm gonna go get those Almerics. Like it's just kind of creates like a fun energy around the game. And I feel like I appreciate seeing that rather than like it's always in good spirit. Like it's never like toxically competitive. It's always just like to have a good time and like further kind of like the role play LARP side of Airsoft.
Yeah, that's the big thing I appreciate is like people get into it and they play hard. But I think it's helped create a high trust environment where everyone knows like, yeah, this is a game. We're playing to have fun. Like everything that happens is super cool, whether I win, lose, or die horribly and get memorialized in the lore as a horrible martyr, or if I win victoriously and my side is the hero. I think people they buy into the narrative of it and are interested in whatever the outcome is.
Yeah, like Kevin's guys, they do the OI SOG guys. They were like at the end, like they were laughing, like having a good time of like, yeah, like canonically, like we all died. Like we're not coming back. The unit's dead. Which I thought was just great. Like even like the game ended on their PB getting rated and they were like laughing and high-fiving each other. And I'm like, that's just awesome. And it's not just like salt after that. Like it just goes to show like what a great group of guys, great sportsmanship as well.
Yeah. Oh man, that's the nice part is the sportsmanship and the camaraderie and the trust is just I think it lets people play like weirder different scenarios where it's like, yeah, in real life, I'm never going to put my squad up against this platoon attacking us, but in this game when I don't care what the outcome is, like, yeah, we'll play out these crazy scenarios.
Yeah, yeah. And just, using whatever equipment you want as well, like not being tied to doing an impression, but you can wear your weird stuff, run the weird replica. I think it just allows people to, just kind of chill out in a way. Like it's not as like, I don't want to say stressful, but it definitely relieves kind of what you can feel some other times when you're playing airsoft.
Well, yeah, because we had one guy at the 24-hour game. He was rocking that wooden bolt action, and
Mhm.
he was like, he got like a bunch of people at one time, and it was hilarious to watch. But you get to run like cool, weird weapons that can be hard or difficult to run at other games, and that's awesome because you get to use that stuff. You're like, I always wanted one of those, but I don't know where I'm going to use it. Well, now you have a place you can use it.
Yeah. I think our rule set, like as wordy and long as it is, if you actually look at what how the restrictions are designed to be played, it actually creates a very open sandbox of viable systems. Like
Oh yeah,
some of the explosive enterprises guys who come to our games were talking about how the issued ammo makes it where gas blowback rifles are way more viable versus at some of the other bring your own BBs games where when everyone has infinite ammo, having a gas blowback rifle just doesn't work.
no,
Yeah, and gas
no,
blowbacks are already worse than AEGs. Give you all the advantages that you can take every advantage you can. So
yes.
Yeah, I just think it's really cool that the weapon sandbox, the role playing, the immersion, like the LARP units people are coming up with where they're making their own lore. We had a guy get a Gojirian flag tattoo. Like it is crazy.
Did we want to talk about the one class adjustment, the big class adjustment that we're doing going forward into next year?
Is it the one I'm thinking of that involves the Shrike?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we are making one class adjustment for next year. It's a pretty minor class adjustment, to be honest. But we are changing the definition of light machine gun to include anything that is belt fed. Because what we realized is when we were looking at what we classify as an IAR versus what we classify as a machine gun, the main difference is actually just that it's a belt fed weapon. So we just are changing the definition of a light machine gun to belt fed guns. They still have to have a stock. They have to look like a light machine gun. They have to be based on a light machine gun receiver. But yeah, honestly, by that definition, the Shrike no longer makes sense to keep as an IAR. I think we kind of initially had the Shrike in that IAR class as well because we anticipated it being kind of a cheese gun with like the plastic strikes and all that. But now that the featherweight 249s are out, honestly, let's let the belt feds be belt feds.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like because you could make the stoners that light, you could make the featherweight 249s that weight. So it's like you're not really gaining anything by restricting that. So you might as well just move it over into the class, and it simplifies the definition of the class
Mhm.
as well.
yeah, and it also just kind of has that like look to it as well. Like as a game admin from afar, like I can just tell, like, oh yeah, that's a Shrike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it is just beneficial, and also it gives those people that do have them. I feel like they're not as common as they used to be, just because there are other options out there for lightweight LMGs. For those players, it lets them use the replica to its full capacity. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the main change. Most of the stuff within the IAR class is going to stay the same. We've also been talking about some very minor adjustments for the DMR and sniper rifle classes. They don't change much, just some clarifications within the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing major is going to change. It's just adding a little bit more of a slight explanation, clarity, and buff to bolt actions, but nothing is functionally changing. It's just taking our original intent and just adding some clarity to it.
Yeah. And I think it gives you a lot of freedom still. And honestly, I would say now more freedom with
Yes.
replicas like
Yeah.
that. We're not changing anything to be more restrictive for any guns. Let me put it that way.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
mainly just
think when
changing for like. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, just changing for clarity and kind of the original intent of
Mhm.
the class. Like we would notice on the back end, like, hey, we're getting questions about this specific thing. Maybe that just needs to be clarified in the rule set. Sort of changes.
Yep.
Yep. All pretty minor stuff, to be honest, which is good. I'm very happy with our current iteration of the rule set overall. And I think players are really enjoying just the overall vibe that it brings to the game. I think it sets the expectation well, and people like the classes and they like the balancing. I saw a surprising amount of CQB specialists
Yep.
for our field games.
Yep. But yeah, because
Yeah.
what we do is we actively keep an eye on all the classes, and if
Mhm.
we see one wildly skewing out of proportion, then we can either roll it back, or one that's never getting used. Well, maybe that one needs a little bit of a buff.
Yeah. One thing I am considering is if we should add another specialty weapon slot for 12-person squads. Because right now
Yeah,
we're at 4, whether you have 8 people in a squad or 12 people in a squad. I think maybe scaling it as a squad gets bigger might make sense, but
yeah,
that's
we'll play with that throughout the year and
yeah,
see if that makes sense to add another slot for that.
yeah, something to play with. We can very easily implement that during the roster formation of the games. So I think as it is, it's pretty well balanced and used pretty well though, because I think people like having, the base of each squad is still the rifleman. It's still a fun class to play because you have the most pyro and you have the most just open weapon platform restrictions. But I think people like also having the freedom to build their own dream squad of I want this many DMRs, this many machine guns. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
kind of
definitely
what's.
like forces people to. Sorry, Kyle. It
No,
forces
go ahead, go
people
ahead.
to build out how they want to. And if you have a really organized squad, like again, going back to the OI SOG guys we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
they took advantage of that at the
Yeah.
24 hour.
Mhm.
Like they took up all of their specialty slots. They were able to cross load things onto riflemen for, throwables or launchables. They had quite a formidable force with just their
Yeah.
one squad that could easily take on something that was, larger than them. I mean, at the beginning of the game, in the first couple hours, they took out a technical and then very coolly got on the gun and used it. Which
Yeah,
like the owners
that
of it
photo's
were
on our
cool.
website now.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like the composition that's allowed can give you so much firepower and so much flexibility within an 8-man group or a 12-man group.
Actually, you know what? That inspired something for me. What we did do the first time this year is we allowed the HMG class.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
We did have
honestly,
one or two,
it
I
turned
think.
out great. I'm very happy with how we've seen the HMG class deployed.
Well, I think people like using it as a platoon level asset.
Yes.
We were actually talking to someone this last weekend at Amps Bolt Bash. We were talking to someone who wants to bring out an HMG and use that to set up on their respawn point as a point defense tool. And yeah, like that style of use is exactly what it's intended for. I think people, as soon as you hear the idea of a crew served machine gun at an airsoft game, I think people are like, yeah, I want to put that on a vehicle or I want to put that on a hard point. And I think people really liked that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those experiences you can't get anywhere else. And again, like it's one of those airsoft guns that like, you can own it, but you're probably not going to have any luck bringing it to the open play, especially if it weighs, 35. I think 45
Mhm.
pounds is what it is in our rule set. Like,
Yeah,
you
45
know,
pounds,
I,
I
I,
believe.
I think the unique thing that I like, and I don't mean to make the entire episode just tooting our own horn, but like it allows you to take guns that maybe aren't the most practical, but still have them have a use that can be beneficial to not only you, but your team as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really I feel like that got embraced really well. And I think overall, like in terms of the way all of that was embraced by players, just what an incredible year it was. Which I guess brings us to our final game of the year, which was kind of a culmination of all of that. The Shield Underworld, our first role-playing game. That was this last August. And man, That was probably
was
my personal
wild.
favorite.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
LARP
that was a
game
good
was
one.
just absolutely crazy. It was our first LARP game. I mean, it was like it had a nice slow build up and then deployed into violence. You know, Crab took over everything slowly but steadily. The food at this place was fantastic. We had like restaurant level cooking at this game. And it was all done by the players. It was amazing. I ate some pasta that I want to go back to the LARP game just for more pasta. I mean, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, what did the media think of that one, Lane?
I think the pasta is very good. If I was doing a food review LARP, I would have gotten a 10 out of 10. Yeah, no, I think yeah, it was just an incredible level of player buy-in, which I think we saw more and more throughout the year. Like it just got
Mhm.
like more and more people got what we were going for. They got invested in the factions, and I think it culminated in that game. It was just, for the first hour or two, people were kind of like dipping their toes in a little bit, just kind of understanding how the game works, which is what happens at all LARP games, I feel, especially on their first run. But from there, it was just a wonderful experience. Like it had a good vibe. Occasionally there was extreme violence, but otherwise there were people that I feel like we never had chaos gremlins who like just wanted to like ruin other people's days or just be violent for the
Yep.
sake of being violent. When there was
No.
violence, it had a purpose. Like it was to further a faction's goals or to move the story forward. So I think that people just got it. I will say from my end on admin, doing like a journalist sort of LARP. It's hard to admin when you're trying to play like a lawful good character. Like I got robbed pretty early on, so in my mind, I'm like, well, my character would never associate with that faction again. And it led to me not taking a ton of pictures of them, unfortunately, of the Black River guys.
Wow.
But yeah, I definitely think for next time, I got to do something a little bit more neutral as a as White Cell. I just liked the idea of doing a LARP that didn't get my camera shot at very often. I've taken a
Mhm.
couple of hits with it since I've gotten it, but like if I can avoid it, that's the best.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with with the style of LARP though is I was the more controversial character. And that
Yes.
sounds really great because you get to interact with a lot of people until those people are holding you hostage for hours. And all you want to do is have a Gatorade and go to sleep. Oh man. But I think what was really funny was how that game started out. It was basically perfectly functional society simulator.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody got along at the beginning, and we can't have that. Then what's the point of the toy
No.
guns? Yeah, it would just like devolve, and then you'd have Utopia again, and then it would devolve, and then you'd have Utopia again. It was weird how like everybody just like wanted to get along and just vibe for a weekend. Like maybe we need to become like a camping company because everybody just likes each other so much. But yeah, it was, definitely like again, like we didn't have a lot of chaos gremlins, and I think that's what allowed the, that kind of, coming together as a community, so to speak, to happen.
I think the nice thing too was that there was adequate opportunity for organized chaos. I think if you had a total like you can't have a story without conflict, right? I think if you have a total like perfectly functional society, it it's a good vibe and it's fun to like have that time to Quentin Tarantino with all the other players. You're having way too much extra dialogue with your characters, trying to figure out who's on your team, so to speak, and who's not. But I think it really nicely flows into the next pillar, which is the combat experience of now you're engaging with perhaps a very limited gun that you couldn't bring much excuse me, you couldn't bring in like a specialty weapon, so now you're using a really limited gun like just a rifleman or a shotgun. And I think it really helped to make things feel purposeful and kind of cinematic where you're not just min-maxing your tools.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fun seeing a gunfight where like most people had handguns or a
Mm.
Springer shotgun. Like there was midway through Saturday, there was a awful mix-up where a bunch of civilians got deputized because somebody like just shot somebody in cold blood and ran into the woods. So they all get deputized. They go out into the woods. They get that person, and then they're coming back feeling all successful. The police chief didn't hear about the deputization by the governor, and then all those deputized civilians got gunned down. And I've got some photos from that gunfight of other Eric, one of our staff members, um, like holding off several police officers with an Elite Force hater of all guns. I think it was like it was some sort of revolver. Um, and when else do you get that in airsoft? Like it was so cool to see a fight that wasn't just high-end AEG versus high-end AEG. I feel like one, it made it last longer, and two, it was just way cooler to watch on the sidelines. So yeah, it was just a really unique combat experience to watch, and then to I got to play a little bit at night to participate in.
Yeah, I think as long as you have the compelling like pillars there, I think that also helps to demotivate chaos gremlin behavior. I think that's the secret sauce, so to speak.
Yeah, no, we had excellent balance of the Chaos Gremlin, and the firefights that did happen, they did last way longer than normal airsoft gunfights because the weapons were so different. People had to close distances. They were more conscious of their shots because the BBs were functionally the currency. I mean, it was a good experience overall.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And what a great job. We haven't mentioned enough at all our staff, and especially at the role-playing game. Like I was just I was really, really impressed with how our staff did this year. Man.
No, they're the ones who made this possible. Without the amazing staff that we have, Gun Gamers would not be possible because it requires good staff, and our staff are amazing and they do such great work every single time. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, like doing the role play game specifically, it takes a lot of energy to act, especially to act well. And to be able to do that throughout an entire 24-hour game, like there was times where like as somebody who didn't interact with people too often because I was like running game supplies and making sure that things kind of ran smoothly, but in the shadows, even there were some times where like I wanted to slip character by Sunday morning, but like they were still in character, they were still moving the plot forward, and I couldn't do it. Like they just did a phenomenal job. And like for the people that have played our games, like they're all players as well. Like they all want the best experience possible, and not to brag, but I think we picked a good group of dudes and to help us out with these games. But not to get too emotional about our group of friends that helped make this possible.
Yeah.
We did get a lot of feedback about this game, which it was our first. It's different than a
Mhm.
Force on Force, and there are some changes that we are looking at as we plan our next LARP game that we'll be announcing at some point. I think one of the things that we'll want to improve upon is using up more of the facilities that we go to. I feel like it
Yeah.
was definitely people were a little too close to each other. I'd like to spread them out a little
Agree.
bit more.
Yeah, I think spreading people out more and making people move a little bit more to do things, and then giving people a little bit more room to do sketchy things with everybody like so close together. I think it was just kind of it was a little constricting. I think using more of the space we have to spread people out a little bit more, I think more pockets of settlement would be a good way to do that.
Yes.
Something like a multi-settlement type of system. Uh, it's also going to be about like picking facilities that are suitable to that. We just want to make sure that as we're venue shopping, basically, we're trying to pick somewhere that's going to let us like spread people out and do more with that. And another thing I think with the role playing game was I think we had a neat idea with using that northern half of skirmish during the night portion, but I think the reality of it during the night was a little bit that was something that I felt like could have been closer personally.
Yeah, well, the transitioning a bunch of people over in the dark when they don't have night vision is exceptionally difficult, especially if they've never been to the facility before, because the woods can be very, very disorienting there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So,
and they're not entirely flat. They're just
no.
covered in rocks. Um, yeah, I like how the old Omega games used to do it, which like they hosted at the same facility. Of it was like, all right, you're coming or you're not. Like this is your one chance to go out there. You're being guided out there because we did have some people kind of like string their way after the initial group, and those are the ones that really had a frustrating time navigating
Yeah.
because the tree cover is just so thick at skirmish. It gets insanely dark. Like even with my nods on at times, I was like, ooh, like it's really dark out here. I also wish that we had a little bit more planned things at night. Like we had the governor's art show, but once that wound down because somebody took a shot at Eric, we just needed more for people to do during the night. But I mean, we did
Yeah.
have some activity in the original game area, like the original town at night, which I thought was interesting at the Metzger compound, which was like the Connex place where we ended the game. Like that still kept it going. I just wish we had like 2 or 3 different things so you could choose your own adventure at night in that new part of the facility.
Yeah, I think having the factions have more different things planned during the night would have been a good idea, and is something that I think we'll just develop more as we get more practice with the format.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think it was our first one. So like I don't want to
Yeah.
beat on us too hard, but like we are taking player feedback for the next one for sure to make sure that there is
I'm,
more stuff to do at night. I also think that something that'll be good in the future is the possibility of looking at letting civilians have night vision.
mhm.
We kind of outlawed that, but like especially at a place like this where it just gets pitch black, it kind of becomes a safety
Well,
thing at a certain point.
so that was actually one of the things that I also want to improve. This was a big point of player feedback, and something that's a definite improve for next year is there was some vagueness because night vision was not banned for players; it was illegal. So what that meant was that according to the code of the laws as they were at the start of the game, night vision was an assault item and was thus illegal. But that meant that you could still bring it, but if you got caught with it by the police, it was a crime and you would be like fined or imprisoned, or they would interrogate you for being a gooner. Um it wasn't meant to be actually banned. And I think that that was an example of some of the things that we did a little bit. I tried to have a separation between the in-game laws and the actual rules of the game, but I think maybe
That one didn't
communicating,
translate well for whatever
yeah,
reason.
yeah, I think just doing a better job trying to really clearly communicate and delineate this is what the rules of the game are, like the rules of the game of the rule set, the bounds of acceptable play, like that's what's actually allowed, versus then the in-game laws. Those aren't additional rules. Those are what the police will arrest you for, which are being arrested is gameplay, by the way. Like that was something that I think people really appreciated too, was having the interaction with the police. But we just need to make it clear that we're trying to facilitate that with the laws as opposed to restrict what you can do with the rules. I think there's the balance there wasn't quite hit yet.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah,
definitely just a thing of like rules versus mechanics that we
Mhm.
could have been more clear about.
Yeah, it was
But
just
it's
oh,
I was
continue.
gonna say it was still a wonderful time. Just a different experience compared to what we normally do. And I had a lot of fun. For the most of it being on the
Yeah.
sidelines taking photos, but for those couple hours a night where I put on a whole different costume and got to play, I had a blast.
Yeah. Oh God. I As rough of a time as my character had, I had so much fun being the governor for that. I really did lean too far into the Far Cry villain arc. But he got his comeuppance in the end, executed by the police in prison.
yeah, that's my big goal is I want to play next year. I haven't just decided which AO that I want to make sure that I get some trigger time at. So I can finally experience Gun Gamers Productions on the player side.
the tragedy of starting your own event company is you get to run your dream airsoft games, but when do you get to play them?
I mean, they pretty much run themselves after the sun goes down. They get a little bit quieter. As long as we give them everything that you need, you could sneak away, Kyle, and put your nods on and become a rifleman or CQB specialist and just blend right in.
Oh, that's my plan for Snowblind. I'm 100% doing that.
Eric's just going to materialize out of the bushes, spray people down with an SMG, and then disappear again.
Figure it out. It'll be fine.
It'll be great.
I'll spawn in with I'll make it super fair by spawning in with a faction, that not trying to cheese it, not trying to cheat at my own.
Oh yeah, no. That's not what I meant by that statement.
Yeah. Go up to your CO, be like, "Excuse me, I need an ammo resupply. I have none."
Yeah.
I just got to the front. Please help me.
Oh God! Just walk up to Matt with a Glock in the waistband.
But yeah, I think it was definitely a great year. A lot of lessons, a lot of fun as well, and we are looking forward to our next game as we start to wrap up this episode of the podcast, which is Snowblind, like Eric talked about a moment ago. Yep. It is February 1st at Skirmish USA.
Yeah, Snowblind, I'm really, really excited for because we have the entire facility booked. So it's all 750 acres. And yeah, that's really cool because there's so much room for activities. One of the things you can do at Skirmish that's like kind of hard to do at some other places is you can have like platoon and company level maneuvers on entrenched hard points. And there's a bunch of them all throughout the place. That's really unique as far as facilities in the Northeast go. And yeah, I get that it's a paintball field, but the gameplay experience that it's going to allow us to facilitate, I think is actually going to be one of our best.
Oh yeah. When we have that whole facility, like it was hard to tell during the nighttime, but there's like an entire city street, for example, in the middle of the woods there. So like there's going to be all kinds of crazy maneuvers and like there's a huge defendable point. I mean, there's going to be some amazing elements that come at Snowblind.
Yeah, I've never really used that side, so I'm excited. Like I got to see it a little bit at night, but like you really like you can't appreciate it. And then like when we were cleaning up in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, it keeps going. Like there's more that I just didn't even know was out there. So I'm excited to see it for our first game of 2025. And if you want to go, you can click on the link that is at the bottom of your screen, or if you're listening, gungamersproductions.com.
Oh yeah, and definitely come, because one of the other things that's cool though is we are getting to use the whole facility during the whole day, but we are also going to still be in the same facility at night. And I do think that the fact that Skirmish is so dark makes it, for our force on force format, a really unique challenge, because you're going to have to probably use white light, and proper intelligent use of white light. People don't appreciate it, in my opinion. When you really get a good coordinated use of night vision, thermal, and white light, you have an incredibly powerful combination of abilities for your situation. And I think thermals are going to come into play too with how dark it is. You need to be able to see heat signatures. So if you want to bust out night vision, thermals, and just really practice light discipline and white light use, it's going to be a really, really cool opportunity for that. I think there's a lot of opportunities for really tactical play, both for the day and night portions.
And for those of you who are on the fence about it being in the winter, if there's snow on the ground, that'll make the night vision so much better. And even naked eye, even if you don't have night vision, it'll make the experience infinitely better for you to have it out there.
Yeah.
It better snow.
It better snow. This is like the third shot. It's got to work this time.
We've got to have 1 year out of 3 that has snow. All right.
Right.
Like, I'm dreaming of a white snow blind. All right.
Listen, peak for me would be like there is a snowstorm in the middle of the event. That's what I want.
Oh my God. It would be amazing. It'll be just like Modern Warfare 2.
I was just about to say, it's going to be like the snow stealth mission in every good first-person shooter campaign. That's just all I want.
And that would also be a great situation for thermals, because
Yes.
body heat stands out all the more on a cold background. Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Thermal
gonna have to
energy in
sneak
that
out
game
as a
would be
rifleman
crazy.
for that one. Oh my god, can you imagine? Thermal on
And
an
just like that.
MMG?
And
Oh.
just like that, Eric's not sneaking out as a rifleman anymore. He's grabbing the Mark 40.
Yeah, you're right. I have to bust out the Mark 48. I haven't used that at a GGP yet. I've loaned it out though.
You see, in my personal weakness, I love gas blowback. And the fact that we heard that there may be a gas blowback Mark 48 coming, I'm going to have to buy that. I don't know how or why, but we're going to have that. We'll do a review on it at some point.
Yeah.
Just to say that you have it, honestly. It's just cool.
Exactly.
I've got a fun question for you guys. What is the favorite gun you used this year? We talked so much about the games just now. Just like, give me one.
Go ahead, Lane. Tell me, what are you thinking?
Oh, instant. I instantly knew the answer. The Arcturus PP19 with the PE version that has the Parun MOSFET in it. I also used the FE AK-12 at the 24-hour, but that PP19, it's just my favorite gun. It was also the first time that I got to, it was at the LARP game at night when I stopped being a journalist. And I wanted to go save Eric so he can go to bed because he had a headache. It's just such a good gun. I had it with the tracer, with the IR laser, white light on it. I just felt like I was playing a video game, and it was just so much fun. The couple of bursts of extreme violence that we had at night, it's my favorite airsoft gun now. Like I am in love with that gun.
I would have to say my favorite, even though I had a very limited window that I was able to use it with because I had a technical issue. The VFC M249 gas blowback was a fucking riot because it made me competitive against riflemen with it, which is like, for gas blowback, it's hard to undersell how amazing that is to be able to fight back on an even playing field where normally, forget it, it's not remotely possible. So that was my favorite for sure this year.
What about you, Eric?
Man, I'm torn because I also really, really liked those Arcturus guns we got sent.
Yes.
And I also really, really liked the ENLs that we got sent. But there was one gun that was probably the least practical gun I used this year. And it was my favorite gun I used this year. It was the USWG kit that I had my GHK Glock 17 in for the role-playing game. And that thing just fit in my fanny pack. And I may have shot one magazine out of it total that entire game. But I was using it like a PDW, where if I had it out, it was because I wanted to defend myself long enough to stay in place until help was arriving or to leave. And I just had so much fun playing that really impractical experience with that gun, with that super edge use case.
But you got to use it exactly how it's supposed to be used in real life, which made it that much more awesome.
Yeah, it was super fun. And just having, like, when else am I going to use that? It doesn't make sense except at somewhere that you're like concealed carrying in an airsoft game. Yep. Where are you doing that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just being able to use it for what it was built for, getting that rare occasion where you're like, oh my god, like this is actually the practical choice for right now. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed using that gun. So that would be my most practical gun, I think. Or excuse me, my favorite gun, the least practical gun.
Yeah, what a blast this year was, and thank you to everybody who came out to the games, who helped make them possible.
Yeah.
Like without our staff, without our player base, this simply would not exist. So
yeah, this experiment doesn't work without like the incredible group of people who've built up around it. So it's been awesome, and that includes, Lane. This was your first full year producing games with us. What you gonna do it again? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in it for the long run. It was, I had hosted some games before on a smaller scale, but it's a lot of work to run airsoft games, but it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, it is honestly my favorite way to engage with the hobby, and I'm just really glad we get to do it. It really is a privilege.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I
But
think that's about everything for tonight. Unless you guys got anything
yeah,
else.
no, I think that's we're like coming right up on the hour mark. I think it's a good place to call it. So
I would say so.
yeah, any last words anyone wants to say before I do the outro?
I'm good.
Visit us at gungamersproductions.com.
Yeah, we'll see you all in 2025. Looking forward to another incredible season. And thank you to everybody for watching this podcast, coming to our games, and just for the incredible amount of support. It's been really humbling. And we'll see you all in the field in 2025 at our own games and other people's games, I'm sure. Looking forward to publishing more content about just some of the various events we've gone to and whatnot as well. I would love to just really sit down and marinate on some of those for another podcast episode, because now we're bringing this back and I would love to just do a lot more of it. So thank you all for watching. I've been Eric.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Lane.
And we will catch you all in the next episode of the Gun Gamers podcast or the next Gun Gamers Productions game. Peace.